Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Natalie Cutler-Welsh, and today I'm super excited to bring you the first of my Fab Friday or Feature Friday Up Your Brave live stream series. So this is a chance where I get to dive deep on one particular topic with one particular guest expert. So if you've seen my Up Your Brave live stream panel where it's me plus 3, I do that 2 times a week. Definitely check it out. And today I've got a very special guest, Judith, the Confident Eater, with me. Hey, Judith.
Hi, Nat. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's very exciting to be the first, and hopefully we can resolve some issues for some parents today.
Exactly, because I know that you were on my panel a couple weeks ago. We did one around supporting kids through challenging times. So you guys, I will put the link below for you guys later on. But today we're going to dive deep on a topic that causes a lot of angst, I believe, for many parents, whereas other parents just have no idea how stressful this is. And the topic we're doing is creating confident eaters. I know, Judith, you used the phrase from picky to possible. So I'm going to read a little bit of a bio about you, and then I would love it if you could elaborate on your background in this area. And I've got a couple questions lined up. So everybody, Judith Yeabsley is from The Confident Eater. She teaches parents how to get their picky eaters eating. She's the author of Creating Confident Eaters, the guide for fussy eating, and works with individual families to get eating back on track. She runs webinars and she runs workshops as well. She's in Wellington, but she works digitally, by the way. Judith hosts events for parents in conjunction with other experts to do professional development for organizations who work with children. So you can find her on Instagram as well as on her website, theconfidenteater.com. So Judith, I would love it if you could give us a little bit more background about why you're so passionate about this topic, and then we'll go into a few questions.
Fantastic. Look, I'm really passionate because I believe food is really important for all of us, but more so for children with developing bodies and minds. And I actually started out working with parents around, fresh food and nutrient-dense foods. And then I realized that every second parent was saying, I know what to feed my child. I just don't know how to get them to eat it. And I went, oh, so I went looking for an expert to refer them to and realized that actually there just really wasn't that resource in the market. It's really difficult to find, which seems amazing, to find help for picky eating. If you're a parent with a picky eater, where do you go? And so I set out to become that person. And I now work with 100 plus families a year. And it's all I do full time is resolve picky eating issues. And it's been such a beautiful journey for me. It's such a lovely thing to take a child that eats peanut butter on crackers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and to see them, being able to enjoy family foods. And, it's just been an amazing journey.
And I alluded to, the stress of it. And obviously, I mean, for myself, I do have 3 kids, but I do not have as such a picky eater. And so I don't know the angst of it. I know different angst, but not that one. So can you, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being like not really stressful and 5 being super stressful, how stressful is it for parents that do have a picky eater?
For many, you're looking at a 5+. I know a lot of parents who get up in the morning and the first thing they do is go, what am I going to feed my son for dinner? Or how is my daughter going to go to camp? And I have parents who have a 6-year-old who are worried about camp that's going to be happening, for their 10-year-old, because the picky eating is such a big part of their lives and it dominates so many things. You think about social occasions, almost all of them revolve around food. So if you've got a child that is really seriously uncomfortable around food, parties, restaurants, sleepovers, camps, all of these things, travel, people take a suitcase with plain pasta to Thailand with them because they know that, the chances are their child's not going to be able to eat things on the menu. There's all of these things that just impact on us that we don't think about if we don't have a picky eater. But if you've got a picky eater, it's top of your list every time you plan something is, what's going to happen with my son or my daughter?
And I imagine it's interesting. I was thinking about lockdown because in lockdown, life really did revolve around the fridge and the pantry, the dining table, which on one hand, it can, I guess, cause more stress. But on the other hand, I was just thinking now that we're going to level 2, people are going out into the world again. It's for the picky eating family. It's going to suddenly that stress, I imagine, is growing because they have to think about the social occasions and the cafes and the restaurants and going to Thailand with, well, not quite Thailand yet, but preparing. Whereas before they could just like get on with it and no one judged them. I guess the judgment also is a big issue.
Judgment's a really, really ugly thing, and it's really easy to look at a child that's sitting there eating chicken nuggets for the third night in a row and go, well, if mum didn't serve him chicken nuggets. But what I found is that when I work with families, the families that have a picky eater, in general, the parents work twice as hard as the parents who don't have a picky eater, because it is a lot more difficult to cook something when your child has rigid parameters, and I know that there are children who, it's not just chicken nuggets, it's a specific chicken nugget, so all of this is far more difficult than going, okay, well, let me get in the kitchen for half an hour, here you go, they eat it, and off we go. So it actually is more difficult rather than less difficult. And so when we are judging someone, often we just need to be a little bit careful, because this may be an enormous stress for them every single day. And by us judging them, it just makes it that much more difficult.
It's interesting. I'm thinking for the parents that are watching us live, we've got a few. Hi, Haley, down in Christchurch. And the people watching the replay, I imagine they'll be sitting there going, yes, it is. Like, finally, someone's saying it out loud that it's really hard on us. We see people staring. We feel them judging. That just makes it worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I'd love to dive into some myth busting, because I think you were talking about the other people's perceptions as well about, like, just give it time, or if you don't give them chicken nuggets, then they will eat the Brussels sprouts or whatever. So can you take us into some myth busting?
I guess one of the biggest ones is they'll just grow out of it. And picky eating experts around the world have some shocking statistics to share with us. And this is something that even for me in the industry I'm in, I go, these are big figures. So experts around the world agree that between 5 to 10% of all children have an issue with food that is so great that they will never grow out of it without intervention. That means even if you take 5%, if you've got a class of 30 kids, there's going to be at least one in that class that is just not able to eat comfortably and confidently. And that's backed up by my by my work. I know that I've worked with 9 families from the local school. Now, people in general, when they come to me, it's not because they'd like them to eat a little bit more broccoli. These are the children that are really, really having extreme issues with food. That's 9 families who've got a child that is really, really struggling to eat. So when we say they'll just grow out of it, some do, and a lot don't. And actually, if you have an extreme picky eater, they are more likely to go backwards than they are to improve.
Which for some is going to be a reality check, hearing this, right? They're going to be, they're like, I'm hoping, like, if we just give it another year, and then the year goes by and it's the same or it's worse. Is there a certain age, that it's like, if you catch them before this age, it kind of is an easier road, or not?
It's a bit horses for courses, because if you're working with a 2, 3, 4, preschooler, then their emotions are roller coaster, and and it's normal for them to like love bananas one day and hate them the next. So it is going to be a bit roller coastery. Usually, a good benchmark is going to school. If your child goes to school and they're still really struggling, and they've been struggling sort of all the way through, they're probably not just going to magically snap out of it. A lot of people go, oh, but when they go to school and see everyone else eating, but it actually doesn't usually work like that. So that's a really good benchmark. But if you've got an 8-year-old, I work quite commonly with children up to 12. And so you've got an 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old, you haven't missed the boat. And it's important to know that. It may be more challenging in some ways because you've got years and years of habits. But on the other side, you've got a child that is, has very stable emotions that you can have a conversation with, and that you can work as a team.
You can empower them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're working as a team. So it's just a different dynamic.
Awesome. Hey, any more myths before I move on to the next question?
Oh, I love that if you just give them the food you want them to eat and you wait long enough, they're going to get hungry, they're going to eat it. And actually, again, that's totally incorrect. And somewhere upwards of 4% of children will starve themselves rather than eat something that's not in their comfort zone. And for me, it's not about whether your child will starve themselves or not, because obviously we never want to get to that position, but it's more, if I am going to force my child to eat by not giving them food, how does that make them feel about food and meal times? This is not about let me force my child to do something, because that to me seems really ugly. It's more, how do I give my child joy in eating food? Because that's what this is all about. It is, family and food and joy and social occasions, all of it is supposed to be pleasurable. And if we're forcing people to do things, but suddenly it just isn't pleasurable anymore. So for me, that one just seems like totally the wrong approach for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Well, let's go to joy then, because I know you've worked with, obviously you said 9 families just at one school. You've worked with so many families up and down the country, because I know you can work digitally. Without naming names as such, can you give us some examples or a case study of a family you've worked with and how they were and how they are now?
Oh, look, I have so many, and I just love my little case studies. Some of my favorite stories, I had a little girl who'd had an undiagnosed intolerance. So for ages, every time she'd eaten something, it was making her uncomfortable. So she got to the point where she ate peanut butter on Cruskits. And part of the reason for that was because a lot of other foods made her feel unwell. So this is really logical. This is not her being stubborn or any of those sort of things. And so she was having peanut butter on Cruskits for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And of course, and she was 4, and her parents were just pulling their hair out because they realized that this wasn't a great thing to, it wasn't a great nutritional diet for their daughter, but there was really just, they tried everything and nothing was working. And so, we came in and we changed the dynamic, and within a week, she was starting to add things like sausages to the menu. It was just so lovely to see, not just that she was adding foods, but that she was interested in food, and that she was, comfortable about choosing something new. And I think that's the real joy in this, is not that your child can suddenly eat a vegetable or suddenly do this, but that they suddenly discover that food is something to look forward to and is something that they can relax around and enjoy.
So you talked about changing the dynamic. What is, can you dive a little deeper on that?
Oh, huge topic.
Okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of this is, for example, a lot of people are looking for that perfect food. So what is that food that's suddenly going to make my picky eater go, wow, I couldn't eat before, but now Mum's given me this recipe. I go, oh, it's going to be really easy for me. But it actually doesn't work like that, because the way that a picky eating child is approaching food is very, very different from the way we approach food. So, for example, if we go to a restaurant and someone serves you a new chicken dish and it's got some tomato sauce on it, and you haven't eaten it before, but you look at it and you go, oh, I like chicken, I don't mind tomato sauce, I'm going to eat it, and, if I don't like it, and you go through this really logical thought process. A picky eater goes, no. And it's not about, there's no logical thought, there's no prefrontal cortex, it's all that base of the brain, let me stay safe, I'm going to stay safe by saying, whoo, no. And so the way we approach food has such an impact on the outcome. Because if I go to any picky eater in the world, would you prefer to have your crackers that you eat all the time and that you really, really love, or this plate of dodgy looking lasagna that you've never had before? It's not tricky to figure out which one they're going to do. And so the way we approach that food and the way we market it and the way that we sell it, and that's a small part of it, can have such a huge impact. But it's also, this is a really interesting one. And it was brought home to me, the first workshop I ever did, the mum came to me at the end and she said, before I did your workshop, I thought that my son's picky eating issues, and he was 9, my son's picky eating issues were 95% him and 5% me. She said, now I think it's 75% me.
Wow.
And I went, that's really interesting. And it's not that that mum or any parents are doing anything wrong. But what happens is we have a picky eater and then we go, oh, this is a problem. I need to fix it. So we get some advice or we read something on the internet and we go, okay, let me try that. And it doesn't work and it doesn't work. And so then we go, oh, okay, we failed at that. Okay, so let me try something else. So I try that, doesn't work. And we try the next thing and it doesn't work. And then suddenly we go, oh, you know what? There are no solutions for my child. My child is too stubborn. It's not going to work. None of the things that work for other people's children work for my child. So then they go, oh, what am I going to do? Well, there's nothing I can do. So then they become really passive because experience says to them, well, I've tried all these things and none of these things work. So, and it's really stressful for me because I keep trying things and I keep failing in it. And sometimes it even seems to make it worse. So I'm actually better to do nothing. And then they step back and then they go, okay. And then often they'll go, okay, well, he or she will grow out of it, or, you know, when they go to school or, so
they travel through all the myths.
Yeah. So they travel through all the myths and then, but we're sitting there passively. And so then we have changed our approach, not because we're not caring, not because we're not wanting to try, but because we've got, or experience has shown us that what we're doing isn't effective. Does that make sense?
I know that you said to me earlier before we started this, you said like something like 90% of the people that come to you, they think that like, you know, they've tried everything, but also they think, you know what, it's just my kid. Like we are like, we're the worst case scenario. But you actually can help them, which is why I asked you about the case study, because I think it's so important for people to see the vision of what is possible, because what they've tried hasn't worked, or they're resigned to the fact that their child is picky. Something else you mentioned when we did the live stream panel interview is you said children that are sensitive to foods are often sensitive to other things in life. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Look, over 80% of children who are on the spectrum will also have eating issues. The two go hand in hand. And so that rigidity of thought around things translates to food. If you are sensitive, you know, have sort of sensory issues, sensory sensitivities, then you are more likely to also be a picky eater, because if something feels funny in your hands, it's going to feel twice as funny in a vulnerable place like your mouth. So children who are generally anxious are often, again, really struggle around food. And if we think about a child when they're really little, there's 3 things they can control: eating, sleeping, and toileting. And so if we have anxieties, it's very easy to channel those into a control over food. And it's not a conscious thing. It's just something where we go, oh, you know, I am really anxious around things. So one thing I can control is my food. And that's part of the reason that picky eaters generally prefer the processed foods, because that cracker today is the same as that cracker next week, is the same as that cracker next month. And that's really comforting. And why wouldn't I choose a cracker that's really easy to eat rather than a stew that's scary, it changes, it's got all sorts of weird and wonderful things in it. I don't know quite what's in it. It's got an overwhelming smell, you know, there's no crunch to it. So, you know, all of those things make that cracker a big tick. All that piece of toast, all that chicken nugget, you know, you can see the patterns and you can see why in general that's what picky eaters will choose.
Yeah. And I know this is kind of a long-winded question, but how long generally, if possible, does it take someone to make that transition from the cracker that they know and love through to foods that actually serve them more? Like, how long would you work with a family? I know it's going to depend, but can you give me an idea?
It tends to work more quickly with older children. So I have seen a lot of miracles with 8 to 12-year-olds, and where it has been almost an overnight. And I feel it's because the child's in a hole. They know they're in an eating hole. They know that they're different. They know that it's uncomfortable. They know that it makes social things, you know, more challenging, all of those things. And they've almost been waiting for the parents to throw them a lifeline into the hole. And as soon as the parents do, they sort of grab hold and go, thank goodness you got me out of that hole. And once they've got the tools, they go, phew. Doesn't always happen, but that happens more so. With younger kids, as I said, if you've got a preschooler, everything's a bit roller coastery anyway, so it can be a little bit more challenging. But then again, some children just go, oh, actually, that was okay. And once they've got that, and it is about building that confidence. So they do one thing once and they say, I'm going to go backwards a bit here because this is a good explanation. Okay, so if you've got a picky eater, they've got a box. Inside that box are all things they eat. Outside that box is either, depending on how selective they are, could be spiders. So they don't want to get outside that box because anything outside of that box, spiders. Which is why if you've got an extreme picky eater, none of the normal ways that we would work with a child work. Because you go, oh, if you eat this, you can have some ice cream. Spiders. If you eat this, if you don't eat this, you're going to go hungry. Spiders. So all of those things make no difference at all. And so what the goal is to get our child to step outside that box a little bit and it go, oh, that was okay. And the more often they do that, the bigger the box gets and the more confident they get that being outside the box is actually okay. So that's what it's about. And there is no average time because there's no average child and there's no average parent. But if the families I work with, you will always see progress. You're always going to see progress.
And I imagine they go, I wish I'd found you sooner.
I have. I hear that so many times each week because firstly, people don't know I'm there. And secondly, people do wander around in the woods for so long because they're told by their GP they'll grow out of it. They're told they're growing okay, it'll be okay. And their family goes, oh, but remember Uncle Mick, you know, he only ate peanut butter sandwiches and now he eats sushi. You know, everybody's got a story. And then, of course, you've always got this new thing because your friend goes, oh, my children were really picky, but what I did was I did blah, blah, blah. And now look at them. And so you go, okay, great. But then that's not a fit for everybody's child. So anyway.
I love the analogy with the box and the spiders. That's so good. Hey, so if you guys are watching and you do have either yourself or friends, then definitely just tag them in a comment or tell them to look Judith up because it's the kind of thing where you're such a niche market, you know, so narrow, it's so clear what you do and you're so good at it. The thing is people just need to find you and they'll be like, thank God, like I wish I'd known sooner. You guys know that I'm an author of a parenting book. If only they told me. And often parents will be like, if only someone told me about Judith sooner, then I wouldn't have had all this stress. So let's hear what Haley has to say. Haley says, this has already opened my eyes. I'm at the point where I'm at the point where what I've tried hasn't worked. Meal times with healthy food often result in anger or upset from my 6-year-old.
Yep. And that's a really, really common story. And so, and the problem is that dinner time's often that crunch time because dinner time is a really rubbish time to be teaching someone to eat. Okay. I'm at the end of my tether by dinner time. You know, I've had a full day of work and everything's been building, and my child has been at school and they've got all that overwhelm. So come dinner time, we're all tired and we're all more fractious. So I would always say that dinner time's not that time to be teaching a child to eat. We do that away from the table or at other meal times. Dinner time is that time to have family time. And that means that often as a parent, we're going to have to compromise a little bit. And I understand that we want our child to eat healthy food. And I'm not saying we don't want to teach them to eat healthy food, but dinner time's not the time to teach them to do that. And if we go into dinner thinking about dinner not as a time to get our child to eat something, but as a time to sit and relax and bond with our child, we'll often find that the atmosphere will definitely be better. And over time, the studies show that the more relaxed we are, the more likely we are to eat. So if I'm going to give you another little analogy. I just want
to jump in and say, parents, I think will be sitting there going, oh, okay, good. Like, you pat yourself on the back because you don't have to make dinner is not the time. That's actually gives them permission to just enjoy it. Hopefully.
Absolutely. So if we think about it, so Nat, you're out for dinner with your husband and you're having an argument. Are you thinking about eating?
No, you're like, I'm out of here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So you're really stressed because you think you've left the stove on. Are you thinking about eating?
Yeah, no.
No. Okay. You're out for dinner with your extended family and someone's going, Nat, are you going to eat that chicken? Nat, you haven't eaten the broccoli yet. Please, can you have the broccoli first? Nat, you're going to have a couple more bites of that chicken. How come Natalie never eats her chicken? Well, imagine how that would feel. You'd be like, I'm out of here. And so, yeah. And yet we often do that to our children. And so if we can step away and not do that with our children, and every time we go to say something or do something at the table, think, if someone was saying to me at the dinner table, how would I feel? If you wouldn't feel good, it's usually not the right thing to do.
And it comes from a place of love, obviously, and it comes from a place of caring. But regardless, it still has that effect, which makes the kid like stress and it makes the situation worse. So that's awesome tips. Hey, I'd love to see if you can add. I guess one of the questions I had is if there was one thing that a family could do, like if it would like one thing, what would be the first step towards creating a confident eater?
I think I'm going to do a two-parter here. So the first part is you've got to believe that you can do it. And you can. There's a solution out there for every child. It doesn't matter how selective they are. It doesn't matter what you've tried before. There's a solution. You need to believe there's a solution.
Mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a reason I'm the confident eater. You need to be confident that your child is able to do this because they can. And if we're not confident, how can they be? Because they're watching us. And when we think about this, let's put this into terms of reading or swimming. You know, you've got your 2-year-old and you take him to the pool and they're screaming blue murder and you're going, it's okay, you're going to love it once you get in the water. And all we do is feed them positives. Or reading. We would never, ever say, about our 7-year-old, yeah, they're a pretty rubbish reader. But we would say, oh, yeah, my child's a really fussy eater, which is in effect saying exactly the same thing. And so for us, it's reframing the way we look at it. And instead of saying, this is something they can't do, it's looking at the things they can do and saying, right, they're really good here. How do we extend that out? How can we take what they're doing and they're doing it really well and they are eating those crackers and the toast and the nuggets really well, so they can eat and they can eat joyfully and they can eat those things. How do we then expand that out?
And I love the way you use empowered languaging. And I know that you use the term picky eating and fussy eating with a little bit of apprehension. Like it's because people relate to those words, but that's why you've intentionally chosen to call yourself the confident eater and creating confident eaters, because you're changing the way we look at it, which is awesome.
Yep.
Great. So go ahead, if you're watching live or coming here with watching the replay, go ahead and ask questions in the chat box. Judith and I will come back and she can answer them there. But I also know, Judith, you offer, I think it's called a confident consultation. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how people can find you and work with you in the future?
Okay, so I love to have an initial talk to parents, complimentary, and just find out what's happening and what the solutions are. So if you are sitting there and you're saying, oh, but my child seems really, really bad, or it's been a couple of years and nothing's getting better, I'm not sure whether I should take action, I'm not sure whether I should wait, if you're sitting on the fence, or if you just want to find out exactly where you're up to, get in touch and we'll have a complimentary confidence session where we can just look at what's happening and I can recommend solutions. And I've got different programs that tailor to different families, different budgets, so there's something to suit. Don't
You've got a menu. You've got a menu of options.
Absolutely, that's right. Yes, and don't struggle alone, because you don't need to do this alone. And a parent with a tool, parents are almost always the ones best placed to work with their child. Who spends more time with a child, is more invested, or knows a child better than a parent? All you need is the tools. Once you've got the tools, whew, off you go.
I totally agree with that. But I also want to chime in and say, sometimes as a parent, when things are like pressured, you just want like an expert to come in and just tell you what to do. So I have this phrase I use, like, just tell me what to do and make it easy. Like, just tell me. So almost having you come in and guide them. The parents aren't like, okay, see you later, but they're still involved, but they just haven't been able to do it on their own. And that's actually okay. Like, maybe it's time. Sometimes they get to that point where they're like, it's time for us to call Judith and let's do this. Let's make this happen. Someone's asking, how can you encourage a child to eat less sugar? Is that something you want to comment on?
It's not really my area. But I would suggest that food is food, and it's really important to approach it as food is food and not label, well, because it's sugary, it's bad, and because it's broccoli, it's good, because really all foods are part of a balanced diet. So if we start approaching it like that, I think that's a lot more positive than to say sugar's bad, so we shouldn't do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. That's awesome. And Judith, before we wrap up, where else can they find you? I know I'll put the website above. Are you on Instagram? I know you're on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And do you have anything else coming up, or any last comments you want to make before we say farewell?
Okay, I'd love you to join our Facebook group because it's a really warm, inviting place, and there's lots of information on there, and I jump on and do little mini workshops and all sorts. So that's Creating Confident Eaters. I've got my first book, which is Creating Confident Eaters, and that's a really good way to make a start in your own house, and it takes you from crackers, toast, nuggets, all those things, and it says, right, my child only has toast for breakfast. How can I take my child from toast to something else at breakfast? And it shows you in simple steps. And I'm in the middle of writing book 2, which will be all focused on trying foods, because that's the key problem. If we have a picky eater, how do we get them to try and add foods?
Awesome. So there's tons of different ways that you can help people, and the group is free, I think, and then you've got other options as well. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Judith. That's been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me, Nat. It's been really good fun, and thanks everybody for listening. And if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them up there and we can come back and answer them. And if you need to find me and have a chat, I'd love to talk to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I love this so much. So you guys know I love helping moms. I always say I work with overwhelmed moms and overworked entrepreneurs, but I'm not the expert. Like, in fact, my tagline in the book is, we're not the experts. We're the best friends you never knew you had, with Jackie and I. So I love bringing in actual experts on areas that I just can't help people in, but I know that they're real points of pressure for families. So thank you so much for joining us today, Judith. And thank you guys for watching. This is the Up Your Brave live stream on Fab Friday, where I'm bringing you fabulous guests and really just diving deep on specific topics, not always parenting, but specific topics, so that we can basically help to raise the resilience, health, and happiness on a global level. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.